actually have some variety this month. A children's story, some philosophy, well, kinda, a murder mystery, gothic horror, and a cursed rom-com. We actually had a few days of sunlight early this month, so I wanted to do some light reading, nothing too dull or too dense, just to have really fun with it. And my choice fell on 2 books. One was pretty good, one I didn't finish. Midnight Library was actually pretty good. I think we've seen this concept done before. A character gets the chance to relive their life or pursue an opportunity that they might have missed before. My personal reading experience was slightly ruined by the narrator of the audiobook, who, for whatever reason, decided to insert her own opinion before starting to read the book. They should be forbidden from doing that, oh my god. But she was like, once you think that you have the book figured out, you have to continue, it just might surprise you. And so I was waiting for a twist, but it never came. The book ends exactly how you think it's gonna end, and there was no chance in hell that it was gonna end any other way. But really, a book like this is all about the journey, not the destination, and I think that Matt Haig does well with the concept. He approaches this idea of us reliving our own lives from the perspective of the multiverse theory, and he actually gets to play around with it, not only with the most likely scenarios for this particular character, but also the slightly less expected scenarios. But he first approaches it from the regrets perspective. His main character, Nora, has many regrets about her life, and so she gets a chance to relive her life and maybe correct some of the mistakes that she's made, or at least the things that she regrets. And through living through these scenarios, she actually gets to see that maybe they weren't so great after all. I personally cannot relate because my regrets rarely have to do anything with my actions or inactions, but rather other people's actions, like, say, your country's decision to invade a neighboring one. Yeah, that kind of throws a wrench into all of your plans and your life, frankly, and you are lucky if you can recover. But anyways, actually, sidebar, it seems like a theme lately, this idea of grass is greener on the other side and how it's not true. Early in the year, I read a Korean book that had a very similar motif. In there, people could live out other people's lives that they believe to be better, and how they actually get to see how these lives are not all they cracked up to be. Like, for example, there is a girl who's decided that she wants to be this model because the model is dating her favorite K-pop star. And as it turns out, the K-pop star actually is beating his girlfriend, so it's not that great. Or somebody else thinks that his co-worker is doing so great in life while the co-worker is actually taking care of his bedridden mother and all of that. And that book was not very good because it delivered this message in a very after-school special kind of way. And I was so confused because who was the target demo for that book? Like teenagers? And really not even dissing the teenagers. I feel like a message for them could have been delivered a little bit less bluntly. But also, my book club was reading If Cats Disappeared from the World. I fully skipped it, but I think it has a similar theme, doesn't it? There's something in the air, I tell you. But coming back to the library, I think some of the shortcomings of these lives that Nora gets to live were also delivered a little bit too bluntly. Like, oh, if you pursue a showbiz career, you're going to lose your family. Like, what else is new, first of all, but at the same time, it's probably not even true. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because it's all about Nora and Nora understanding herself, what is important to her, how she made choices in her life, what she put first. So it all feeds into that, so I liked that part. I do not know if Matt Haig has any kind of proper philosophical background because he tries to play with this deeply philosophical kind of concepts of the multiverse or even existentialism. I'm not into philosophy, so I don't know. But it reads more like pop philosophy, so it shouldn't scare you off. And yes, the ending is a little bit forced, but as I said, it couldn't have ended any other way because it's supposed to give us hope, because none of us really could live out our lives twice. Even people who believe in reincarnation, they get reincarnated as other things. We only have choices going forwards, not backwards. So it's a perfectly decent book. So if it strikes your fancy, you can pick it up. It's relatively short as well, but do keep in mind that trigger warnings do apply. Now, the second book that I tried to read this month was The Last Word by Katy Birchall. And I promised myself I wouldn't do this to me. I wouldn't suffer through another rom-com, and here I am. I made it through almost half of the book, like 41% according to the app, and nothing happened. Nothing. The main girl, she's a journalist. She writes for like a celebrity gossip column, I guess. And she is not like other girls. Can you believe that? She actually cares about the celebrities that she interviews. And that makes her special. Dear Lord. But also the love story. It is enemies to lovers. And for almost half of this book that I've read, the main leads interacted maybe twice, very antagonistically because of some as of yet undisclosed past that they have. But they also heavily breathed on each other and almost kissed twice over the course of this 41% of the book. So maybe that's appealing. I don't know. It is also grumpy sunshine, and I'm kind of sick of that, so I gave up. But you know what? Something tells me these crazy kids will get together by the end. What do you think? Oh, but this book also has the bane of my existence when it comes to these modern rom-coms books. Long ass descriptions of what characters are wearing for no apparent reason, with no kind of intent, just a page filler. Like, oh my god, can you stop? But also, speaking of the books I didn't get to finish this month, I've had Dandelion Wine on the list for a very long time. I've had this copy gifted to me like ages ago, and I've tried to read it once before, and according to this makeshift bookmark that I have here, I only managed to get through this much of the book, but also apparently I read it in 2011 when I was on vacation in the Ukraine, because this thing is the plastic from the local SIM card that I bought then. Yeah, I'm not going back in this lifetime, am I? But also, isn't this copy pretty? But this book, actually, I've made it through even less of it this time around, and I think it's just simply not my cup of tea. I cannot relate or care about these adventures of a young boy and his childhood. I read a different book earlier this year. It's in Russian, so I cannot recommend, but it was a coming-of-age story for a teenage girl, how she goes to her grandma's and the adventures that she has there, the first love, kind of all of this. And I actually liked that one, so I feel like it's simply the boyhood stories that do not resonate with me at all. Or maybe I didn't have a happy childhood like this boy did, so nothing for me to reminisce about. And isn't that depressing? Maybe I will give it another try in another 10 years. How about that? A moving recollection of magical small-town summer. Yeah, that's not me. But my aversion to boyhood stories does not necessarily apply to children's stories, because I was talking to a friend of mine about The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupery, because a friend's son is going to school and they have these themed classes and all of that, and the theme was The Little Prince. So I was like, oh, why not reread it, this time in French, because I feel like I can manage it now. I could have sworn that I had a French copy of The Little Prince around here somewhere. Maybe it's still at my dad's, I don't know. This is my Russian copy from when I was a child. It obviously has Exupery's drawings and everything in it. And let me tell you, I loved reading it when I was a child, and I loved reading it now. It's actually quite interesting reading it as an adult. You see the didactic a little bit more clearly now. Like, for example, the thing about the baobabs, how you're supposed to fix your problems when they're small and not let them kind of snowball into something unwieldy. I didn't get the metaphor when I was a child, let me tell you, but I do get it now. But the story is so full of heart, so full of emotions, no matter what age you are. My absolute favorite bit from here is when the little prince arrives on Earth and he sees this rose garden full of roses, and he starts crying because he had a rose on his little planet and she told him that she was the only one, that she was unique, and now he sees that there are thousands and thousands of roses and she's not special. But then he goes on to befriend a fox, and the fox teaches him about this, and he comes back to the rose garden and tells the roses, like, yes, there are thousands of you here, but you are not unique. There's nothing special about you, but there is a rose out there on my planet, and she is unique because she's the one I took care of. She's the one who was afraid of the draft and all of that. And she is special because of it. And it makes me cry every single time. The book is very short, but it is so full of like wonderful lessons, such heartfelt emotion. And it is also very quotable, so it was such a pleasure just to reread it now. Fun fact, I'm actually a big fan of French musicals, and there is one about the Little Prince that wasn't particularly successful, but I love some of the music from it, so it's fun to discover that they actually used full-on quotes from the original text in their lyrics, so I know some parts of this story by heart. On ne voit pas qu'avec le cœur. Okay, switching gears. I probably should have saved Frankenstein for October, the spooky month, but hey-ho. I haven't seen any movie adaptations of Frankenstein, but I do know that they lean into more of a horror as we understand it now, rather than how Mary Shelley understood it, maybe. And it's fascinating, actually, because the book is accompanied by a foreword from Mary, where she explains the history behind the book, name-dropping Lord Byron, as you do. But she was terrified indeed, but not of the monster, but rather what the monster represents. The book itself is a little bit of a product of its time. All of these early 19th century writers really could have used a good editor to tighten the story up a bit. Here especially, Frankenstein's story is bookended by a story of a man called Walton, written in epistolary genre for no apparent reason, but then it also becomes a nesting doll because Walton tells a story, then he tells a story that Frankenstein told him, then Frankenstein tells him the story that the monster told him, and it all becomes unwieldy. But this Walton, he's also a scientist. He actually aspires to go to the North Pole and make a scientific breakthrough there. So yes, he is thematically relevant somehow, but it's not weaved in properly because seemingly it's simply there to create a cool entrance for the Frankenstein's monster. And it is very cool, but also for this impassioned speech that Frankenstein makes that essentially boils down to, like, human life is worthy of sacrifice for the sake of science, and that simply means that Frankenstein didn't actually learn his lesson with his monster. So that's fine. What is interesting to me is that Frankenstein's story is a story of a relationship between creator and its creation, the duty that comes along with it, and whether or not humans should dabble in such matters at all. Mary Shelley actually lived at such an interesting time when scientific progress was finally starting taking over from religiosity, and that scared the religious folks amongst them shitless, and that included Mary Shelley herself. Creation was imagined as the sole right of God, so if man attempted to do the same, he would end up with a monster. Frankenstein, a parody of Darwin and such, is incredibly utilitarian in his approach. There is no fear or doubt in him when he pilfers the cemeteries for human parts, but once he actually creates his creature, he's terrified of him because he's created a monster. There is a hilarious moment in there. Once Frankenstein is done and he's created this thing, this he's alive moment, he's terrified, he's scared, so he runs away. And he comes back to the lab and the monster is gone. And he's like, well, phew, somebody else's problem now. Like, what? You've created this abomination, you're not even gonna look for him? But the monster is also not simply a monster, he is quite clever. Just simply by looking at other people and watching their interactions, he learns to speak, he learns sciences, but most importantly, he embraces and he has this capability for human emotion outside of the rage specter. Guillermo del Toro must have had a blast with Frankenstein. Guillermo is our beloved ambassador of the monster fakers, so Frankenstein's monster actually fits this quite well because he's so inhumanly hideous, but he also is more human than many people around him. He also craves this human interaction, human emotions, but he is rejected by the society. Juicy. And so the monster, after a while, comes to Frankenstein and he's like, well, this is your fault. You've made me like this. You've made me such that I cannot exist in this world. I want to be part of this world, but I cannot, so it is your duty now to help me. I want a companion, but humans will never accept me, so make me a bride. Very Adam and Eve of him. And he promises that they will go off together somewhere in the mountains where the humans cannot find them because they can survive there and humans can't. Frankenstein agrees at first because the monster is threatening him at that point. But once he starts doing it, he thinks like, what am I doing? What if she's worse than the monster? Because the monster at this point has killed already. And so what if she's more bloodthirsty? What if the two of them procreate and take over the world and eradicate humanity? I have the duty to mankind not to allow this to happen, and so he refuses. What fascinates me here, that this is a story about the creator and the creation, how the monster didn't ask to be created, didn't ask to be this hideous, but neither Frankenstein nor the monster ever think about this potential future bride as an individual. The monster is selfish in his loneliness. He seeks this companionship against all odds, so he doesn't think about how he's condemning this potential woman to the same fate as him, the fate that he curses and condemns Frankenstein for. And Frankenstein only thinks about the fate of his loved ones or the humanity at large. No one stops to think about the implications for this potential future woman, and I find it quite apt. If you've yet to read this story, look out for the similarities between the Doctor and the monster. It's majestic. And yeah, don't expect horror going in. It's very much a deep exploration of the theme in a slightly gloomy, dark, gothic setting. The two other books that I've read this month were The Old Girl Filling Station's Lost Reunion, quite a mouthful, by Fannie Flagg, and A Dreadful Splendour by B.R.Myers. The first one is a generational tale. One part is about this woman in her 60s, living in modern day, as she discovers a family secret. And the second one is about her ancestors living in rural America during World War II, and how these sisters first start running a petrol station when all men go off to war, and then these women become the first pilots in the Air Force called the Wasps. I enjoyed the book. I think if you buy into the main character of the modern day storyline, you should be fine too, because her character type can be quite annoying. This old woman, a little bit kooky, a little bit over the top, a little bit ignorant, a little bit racist, but I actually found her endearing. She has a very cute relationship with her husband and her kids, and a rather strained one with her mother. And she actually gets to grow over the course of the story and as parts of her past are being revealed to her. The World War II storyline is also fine. It's not going to be a feminist manifesto, because as soon as I looked up the author, just look at her. She's old Hollywood, so I wouldn't expect her to be a modern-day feminist, but she gets close enough. I don't remember where I've heard of the Wasps before, but I have. But it's a huge part of the American history of the feminist movement, so a great chosen topic for a book. In the modern day storyline, it's also about our identity, our lineage, what defines us. So it's a perfectly good story with a slightly saccharine ending, but at the same time, I always complain about books not having happy endings, so I will take it. A similar feeling actually about A Dreadful Splendour. It's a detective story, a murder mystery about this fake spiritualist who travels to a country estate to perform a seance for a recently deceased woman. There are a few men kicking around who used to love this woman and blame themselves for her apparent suicide. I don't read murder mysteries that often, but if you're a fan of the genre, there's not going to be anything groundbreaking for you here. Even I figured out part of the twist quite early on, but once again, journey not the destination, and I actually found the main character quite interesting. Her as a character, but also the way that she approaches, like, discovering parts of this mystery. It's all fun. Myers also tries to add this gothic flavor to the piece, and I think she succeeds. The atmosphere is right where it needs to be to add this suspense and a little bit of tension. And by the way, I fully thought that Myers was a man, but now that I know that she's a woman, the back end of the book actually makes much more sense. And not to stereotype women here, but the love story at the end comes out of nowhere. And the ending, I'm not spoiling anything here, but I felt like the epilogue was a little bit unnecessary and over the top for the story being told, but I'll take it. And that's it for September, and I will try to choose some spooky stories for October.